Bonjour à tout le monde. Hello to everyone. Welcome to another beautiful episode where Undiscovered Canvas is discussing with one of the artists that she represents in France. And today we are joined by the wonderful, now I don't know if to say she's not just South African, she's Congolese, she's Angolan, the wonderful Teresa Kutala Firmino. How are you, Sissy? Welcome.
I'm okay. Despite the lockdown, I'm trying to keep busy, working, trying to paint, writing and reading. So I'm okay.
Well, that's exactly what I'm doing also during this lockdown. Teresa, you have a very interesting story. You were born in a town called Pomfret, which is northwest province of South Africa. You were born in a town that was literally a military town, in the sense that it is a town where ex-Angolan soldiers who had fought with South Africans during the South African border war that took place between South Africa and Namibia between 1966 and 1989. These ex-soldiers were then taken to Pomfret to create this community. And if I understand it well, it's a community that consisted of around 800 families. Sissy, I read in one of your papers what you said when you said, home is a place of comfort and safety, but can also be a space of trauma and pain. Can you please tell us, Teresa, how was it like growing up in a military town?
For me to go into that, I need to give you a brief history of the community. So during the border wars and during the Angolan Civil War, I think a unit was created called the 32 Battalion. And then it consisted of different soldiers from different places, but my family comes from the Angolan side. Okay. And then they were put specifically not to fight South Africans or the Namibians, but to deal with the idea of communism coming down to South Africa. There's multiple versions, but that's how I was taught about it, about, the 32 Battalion was created when South Africa was intervening in the Angolan Civil War. And it was a very secret unit, especially secret to South African citizens, so the police was not involved. It was very much a military operation. But during the negotiation between the ANC and the apartheid government, one of the decisions they made was to disband the 32 Battalion. So the unit was disbanded in 1993. They were located between the border of Angola and Namibia. The camp was called Buffalo, and that's where my mom and dad grew up. And then once the unit was disbanded, they were moved down to Pomfret, where I was born in 1993. Okay. So that's like the brief history of where the community kind of ended up in Pomfret. In Pomfret. Yeah. Yeah. And then, because the unit was kept secret, there's a lot of, can even put it in this way. So the law was literally the military. They decided what was considered a crime or not, and they dealt with, because like the South African police was not involved in the issues that the army dealt with. So like, even though, like, despite the Civil War, the community was very close, that we're still very close. And, the community is what we call home. So when I speak about home, I'm not speaking about a physical space. I'm speaking about the community that I grew up in, that my parents, that my grandparents created, and my mom and dad grew up in, right? And then, yes, it is a place of comfort. They are my history. My family is my history in a way. But because the police was not involved, there was a lot of crime and abuse happening in those homes, especially when it comes to domestic violence. Usually, even if you do report the domestic violence, the military police will refer you to the church, right? And the church kind of dealt with, because domestic violence was seen as like a marriage issue. So they would go in, and the marriage being the seventh sacrament. because there were two main churches in the camp, which was the Protestant, I can't say that word.
Protestant, we understand.
Yeah, and then the Catholics and the Catholic Church. So the church kind of dealt with, it's fine, that's what happens in marriage, you deal with that, and a lot of women died because of this. A lot of women, lived their whole life in abusive marriages because of that. But like I always say this, when I speak about the idea a home being a place of comfort and also being a place of trauma, I'm also trying to speak about the complexities of that history where there are no victims and predators, right? It's like especially when it comes to the Black community, we like those things were kind of like symptoms of the time.
Something heavier.
Something heavy, you know what I'm saying? Like there was a time they were living in, and those things were kind of normalized and seen as acceptable, even though it was frowned upon. The men, some of them like were recruited into the 32 Battalion when they were like very young, between the ages of 14. All they knew was the army were disciplined. They'll bring that back to the house, If I have to give an example, the stories of, a father because his daughter did something naughty, he tied his daughter to a tree and whipped her. And then that was probably the type of discipline they experienced in the army as well. And those things were
so they were transferring it.
That's how they grew up. That's what they knew. Literally, you were taught like you need to be clean. Like the military, you need to be clean in a certain way. You need to behave a certain way. And if you kind of, I wouldn't even call it embarrass your husband if you don't fit into those standards, which was also weird because the woman, a lot of them are also refugees. A lot of them are also trying to survive the civil war. If you don't fit into, my mom and I joke about, the Afrikaans standard of being a woman. Where you have doilies and your house looks a certain way and you behave a certain way. And if you don't fit into that, or even if your husband is just abusive, and even if you did everything according to what he wanted to do, if he's abusive, he's abusive, So it's basically the idea of like home in the community is very complex, home being the community, and then obviously home being the place where a lot of these women experience abuse and trauma.
Well, this is exactly what is happening now during the lockdown. Because a lot of women are being locked down with their abusers, and this is the biggest fear globally that we have. I know that you have it in South Africa. We are also dealing with it here in France, where effectively people who were better off, women were better off with their men being at home, being at work because they have some sort of relief, now are forced to be at home with their abusers 24/7. You see, all of this, I imagine, has had a huge impact on your practice today. How has it influenced your work today? This whole experience of growing up in Pomfrey.